These words had spread across the empire like fire. Everyone had heard the story, even in the quiet farming village where Elira once lived. But now, months after that moment in the grand courtyard, she sat alone, staring at the small wooden house that used to belong to Marcus, the human who had saved her. The house was empty. Dust covered the windows. The door swung slightly in the wind. He was gone. Elira felt a heavy silence around her. She remembered the day Marcus left. He had told her he needed to travel, to find a place where humans were gathering. He had said it was important that he couldn't stay hidden forever. But he had promised to return. Now every day Elira walked past the empty house hoping to see smoke from the chimney or to hear his laugh again. But each time there was nothing. The distance between them was not only of miles, it was in her heart. She had been saved by him, yet now she felt abandoned. She tried to write him letters, but who would deliver them? No one knew where the humans were gathering. Some said they were building a new settlement near the mountains. Others claimed they were marching east, raising banners of freedom. But to Elira, these were only rumors. She sat under the old oak tree one afternoon, clutching a letter she had written but could not send. "Marcus," she whispered, reading the words softly. "I miss you. I feel like a shadow without you here. You carried pain for me, and now I do not know how to carry the silence you left behind." Her voice broke and tears ran down her cheeks. She pressed the letter to her chest and closed her eyes. At night, she dreamed of him. She dreamed of the courtyard where the lashes had fallen. She remembered the sound of the whip, the gasps of the crowd and his voice shouting for her. Why would a human do that? Why would someone take another's pain without hesitation? She thought about it again and again, trying to understand. Perhaps that was what it meant to be human, never to accept injustice, never to watch someone suffer alone. And then a thought struck her like a spark. If Marcus could take lashes for her, could she not endure the distance for him? The next day she tried to live as he would want her to. She helped her neighbors, shared food, and spoke kind words to those who were afraid of the Empire's laws. She remembered how Marcus had smiled even under pain, and she tried to carry that strength within herself. But the sadness still lingered. Every time the wind rattled the empty house, her heart ached. She wanted to reconnect. But how? She had no map, no path to follow. All she had were memories, and the story that spread from village to village, the human who endured 300 lashes and did not fall. One evening, while gathering water from the well, she overheard travelers speaking. "They say the humans are building a hall in the mountains," one man whispered. "A place of fire and stone where they meet in secret." Elira's heart raced. Could Marcus be there? For the first time in months, hope stirred inside her. That night, she sat at her table, staring at the letter she had written. Her hands trembled as she added new words at the bottom. "If you can hear me, Marcus, I will find you. Even if the path is hard, I will not stop. You once carried pain for me. Now I will carry this distance until I reach you." She folded the letter carefully and placed it inside a small wooden box. It was not ready to send, but it was ready to guide her. Days passed, but Elira felt lighter now. She began preparing for a journey, though she did not yet know where it would lead. She gathered supplies, food, and a cloak. Each small step gave her courage. She knew Marcus might be far away. She knew she might never reach him. But she also knew that hope was stronger than silence. If a human could stand against whips and pain, then she could stand against loneliness and distance. One night, as she sat beneath the stars, she closed her eyes and remembered again the moment that had changed her life, the courtyard, the whip raised high, the cruel sentence, and then the shout, "Give them to me." The words echoed in her heart. She smiled softly, wiping a tear from her cheek. Yes, that was what it meant to be human. To stand, to endure, and to carry another's burden. And so, even in her sadness, she felt a quiet strength. Because she knew one day their paths would cross again. She was doomed to 300 lashes, until the human shouted, "Give them to me." And, from that moment on, she carried not just the memory of Marcus, but the fire of hope he had left behind. The night was quiet, but Elira could not sleep. She lay awake, listening to the soft rustle of wind outside her window. Her mind kept circling back to Marcus, the human who had once stood between her and pain. The distance felt heavier now than the lashes ever could have been. She wished he were there to guide her, to speak words of courage, but instead, she faced only silence. She whispered into the dark, "Where are you, Marcus? Do you think of me too?" No answer came. The next morning, Elira walked past his empty house again. The shutters banged softly against the wall, and the garden was wild with weeds. She stopped at the gate, gripping the wooden post tightly. Memories filled her. Marcus laughing while fixing the roof. Marcus sharing food with children. Marcus standing tall, even when the Empire's guards passed through the village. It was strange how one person could leave such a strong mark on her heart. And now he was gone. Elira tried to live her days normally, but the loneliness stayed. She helped her neighbors with chores, carried water for the old, and sang songs to the children. Yet even when others smiled at her, she felt hollow inside. She wanted to reach Marcus, but she had no way to send a message. The Empire controlled the roads. Travelers spoke in whispers. To ask about humans was dangerous. Still, she listened carefully whenever strangers passed through. Each rumor became a thread of hope she clung to. One afternoon, Elira sat with Mira, an old woman from the village. Mira had always been kind, and she knew Elira's heart was heavy. "You think of him every day, don't you?" Mira asked gently. Elira nodded, her eyes downcast. "He carried my pain, and now I don't know how to live without him near." The old woman placed a hand on hers. "Then carry his memory. Let it guide you. He gave his strength so you would not break. Don't let distance take that away." Elira thought about those words all evening. Carry his memory. Let it guide her. Perhaps she could not see him, but she could live as he had taught her. To be brave, to share kindness, to never bow to cruelty. That night, Elira dreamed again. She stood in the courtyard of the Empire, hearing the crowd, feeling the fear. The whip cracked in the air, but before it struck, she heard his voice again. "Give them to me." She woke with tears in her eyes. Yet this time, they were not tears of sadness but of determination. She whispered to herself, "If he could take my lashes, then I can take this distance. I will find him." Somehow, Elira began preparing for a journey. She didn't tell anyone yet, not even Mira. She wasn't ready to explain. She only knew that her heart would not rest until she tried. She collected dried food, filled a water skin, and mended her old cloak. Each task felt like a step closer to him. Still, doubts filled her. What if she failed? What if she never found him? But then she remembered his eyes during the lashes. Even as pain struck him again and again, he had not looked away. He had smiled at her, weak but unbroken. "Humans do not give up," she whispered. "Neither will I." One day, two merchants passed through the village. Elira listened quietly as they spoke. "They say the humans are gathering in the northern mountains," one said. "A great hall of stone and fire is being built. They call it the Hall of Endurance." Elira's heart leapt. Could Marcus be there? It was the strongest rumor she had heard yet. That evening, she told Mira, "I think I must go north." The old woman frowned. "It is dangerous. The Empire will not welcome travelers on those roads." "I know," Elira said softly. "But I cannot stay here waiting forever. He once carried pain for me. Now I must carry this journey for him." Mira studied her face for a long time, then nodded slowly. "Then go, child. Carry not just your hope, but ours too." The next morning, Elira stood at the edge of the village with her pack. The road stretched before her, quiet and uncertain. She turned once to look at Marcus's empty house. "Wait for me," she whispered, though she knew he could not hear. I will find you. And then she began to walk. The road was long, and loneliness pressed hard on her shoulders. She passed fields where farmers bent their backs in silence. She crossed streams where children played but did not laugh loudly, afraid of drawing attention. Everywhere she went, she saw fear in the eyes of people. It reminded her of the courtyard, when no one dared to move, when no one dared to speak, until Marcus had. And in that memory, she found her strength again. At night, when she camped under the stars, she often spoke aloud, as if Marcus were listening. Today I walked many miles, she would say. My feet hurt, but I did not stop. Or, I gave bread to a boy who was hungry. It reminded me of you. Her voice was soft, but it made her feel less alone. She imagined Marcus hearing her words wherever he was. She imagined him smiling. Days turned into weeks. Elira grew tired, but she also grew stronger. She faced storms, cold nights, and empty roads, but she did not turn back. Sometimes she doubted. Sometimes she felt the weight of distance pressing down, whispering she would never reach him. But then she remembered his voice, firm and fearless. Give them to me. Those words carried her forward each time she wanted to stop. One evening, she reached a hill and looked north. In the distance, she thought she saw smoke rising, not from villages, but from something larger, something built by many hands. Her heart raced. Was this the Hall of Endurance? She did not know for sure, but hope blazed inside her again. She whispered to the wind, Marcus, I'm coming. And with that, she walked on, carrying not just her longing, but the fire he had once lit inside her. She was doomed to 300 lashes until the human shouted, Give them to me. Those words had saved her once. Now they saved her again, guiding her through distance, silence, and fear toward the hope of seeing him once more. The path north stretched far and wide. Elira walked for days, her boots worn and her cloak heavy with dust. Every morning she rose with the sun, and every night she lay beneath the stars, whispering Marcus's name into the silence. The distance between them felt endless. Sometimes she wondered if he thought of her at all. Sometimes she feared she might never see him again. Yet whenever those doubts filled her, she remembered the courtyard. She remembered the moment he stepped forward, shouting, Give them to me. That memory lit a fire inside her chest. If Marcus could carry lashes, then she could carry loneliness. On the 12th day of her journey, Elira reached a small town at the foot of the hills. The place was quiet, too quiet, as if fear had soaked into its walls. People glanced at her with tired eyes, then quickly looked away. She stopped at a well to drink when a boy approached her. His clothes were ragged, but his eyes were sharp. You're not from here, he said. Elira smiled faintly. No, I'm traveling north. The boy studied her. Looking for the humans? Her heart raced. What do you know of them? The boy lowered his voice. They say the humans are building a fortress in the mountains. Some call it the Hall of Endurance, but the Empire doesn't like it. Soldiers have been watching the roads. Elira's hope flickered, but so did fear. Thank you, she whispered. The boy only nodded and ran off, disappearing into the streets. That night, Elira stayed in an inn. The room was small, the blanket thin, but it was the first roof over her head in weeks. She sat at the table with Oyo, a candle, pulling out her wooden box with Marcus's letter inside. She read her words again. You carried my pain. Now I will carry this distance for you. Her eyes burned with tears. She pressed the paper to her chest and whispered, I'm close, Marcus. Please wait for me. The next morning, she left the town and climbed into the hills. The air grew colder, the wind sharper. Trees stood tall around her, their branches swaying like they were warning her to turn back. But she did not stop. The road grew rough. Rocks cut at her shoes and her legs ached with each step. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, but she kept walking. At night, she dreamed again of the lashes, of Marcus's back bleeding under the whip. She always woke with tears, but also with strength. His pain had become her torch in the dark. One evening, as she rested by a stream, she saw smoke rising in the distance. Not the thin smoke of a village chimney, but thick, heavy smoke, like from a forge. Her heart leapt. Could it be the humans? She rushed forward, climbing a ridge. From the top, she saw it, a great fire glowing in the night surrounded by tall walls of stone. Voices echoed faintly, strong and proud. Tears filled her eyes. She had found them, but reaching them was not simple. The path wound through deep valleys where shadows hid dangers. Twice, she saw soldiers patrolling, their armor glinting under the moon. She hid in the bushes, her heart pounding. It was then she realized how dangerous this was, not just for her, but for Marcus too. If the Empire knew she was searching for him, they might use her to hurt him. For a moment, fear told her to turn back, to return to her village, to safety. But then she remembered Marcus's smile through the pain, the way he had refused to fall. No, she whispered to herself. I will not turn back. On the 20th day of her journey, Elira finally reached the base of the mountain. The fortress stood above her, carved into the rock, lit by torches that burned bright against the night. She felt small before it, like a single grain of sand against the sea. But she also felt hope so strong it nearly broke her chest. Marcus, she whispered. I'm here. She climbed the narrow path, her legs trembling. At the gate, 2 humans stood guard, their armor plain but strong. They looked at her with surprise. You are not one of us, one said cautiously. No, Elira admitted, her voice shaking. But I am searching for someone, a human. His name is Marcus. The guards exchanged a glance. Elira's heart thudded, painfully. Please, she begged. He once saved me. He took lashes meant for me. I've come all this way to find him. The guards studied her for a long moment. Then one of them spoke softly. Wait here. Minutes felt like hours. Elira stood trembling, afraid of what answer would come. Was Marcus truly here? Or had she only chased a shadow of hope? Finally, the guard returned. His face was calm, but his eyes carried something deeper. Come, he said simply. Elira's breath caught. She followed him through the gates, her heart beating faster with each step. The fortress was alive with sound, hammers striking metal, voices chanting songs of endurance, fires blazing in forges. Everywhere humans moved with purpose, building something greater than themselves. Elira felt a strange warmth. She had seen fear in every village, silence in every town. But here, there was no fear. Here, there was strength. Perhaps this was humanity's gift, the ability to turn suffering into fire and silence into song. At last they reached a great hall carved into the mountain. The guard opened the door and Elira stepped inside. The hall was lit with torches. At the far end a figure stood, tall but scarred, his back straight, though his body carried marks of pain. Elira's eyes filled with tears. Marcus, she whispered. The figure turned, and for the first time in many months their eyes met again. She could not speak. Her voice broke, her knees weakened, but her heart soared. The distance was gone. She had found him, and in that moment, she remembered the words that had carried her all this way. She was doomed to 300 lashes until the human shouted, "Give them to me." Those words had saved her life. Now they had carried her back to him. The hall was quiet except for the sound of fire crackling in the torches. Elira stood frozen, her eyes locked on the figure at the far end. Marcus turned slowly, his face lit by the glow of flames. He looked older. His body bore new scars, but his eyes were the same, calm, steady, and full of the fire she remembered. Marcus. Elira whispered again, her voice trembling. For a long moment he only stared at her as if unsure whether she was real. Then at last a smile tugged at his lips. Elira. he said softly. She ran forward, her heart pounding, and stopped just before him. She wanted to embrace him, but something held her back. Months of distance stood between them, heavy and unspoken. "I found you," she said, tears filling her eyes. "I thought I never would." "You came all this way," Marcus said, his voice quiet but warm. "Through the mountains, through the soldiers." "I had to," she whispered. "You carried my pain once. I could not let the silence carry me away from you." Marcus looked down, and for a moment sadness crossed his face. "I wanted to return. I thought of it every day. But I could not. Humanity is building something here, Elira. Something greater than me." Elira felt her chest tighten. She was happy to see him, but she also felt the distance still between them. He had not chosen to stay by her side. He had chosen this hall, these people, this cause. "I was afraid," she admitted. "Afraid you had forgotten me." Marcus shook, his head firmly. "Never. But I knew if I stayed in the village, the Empire would come for me. And when they came, they would come for you too. I could not let that happen." His words cut through her sadness, but they also left her with a hollow ache. He had left to protect her, but in protecting her, he had left her alone. The two stood in silence for a long moment. Around them, the hall hummed with the quiet energy of humans working, planning, and building. Finally, Marcus said, "Come. There is something I want to show you." He led her through the great hall, past smiths hammering iron, past builders carving stone. Men and women sang as they worked, voices rising together, strong and unbroken. "This," Marcus said, gesturing to the hall, "is what it means to be human. We suffer, but we do not stop. We fall, but we rise again. Every scar, every lash, every wound becomes a brick in something greater." Elira watched, her eyes wide. "They are not afraid," she whispered. "No," Marcus said. "Fear is the Empire's weapon. But here, in this place, fear dies. Here, hope is stronger." Elira felt tears sting her eyes. She had traveled so far, carrying her sadness like a burden. But here, surrounded by the fire of humanity, she felt that burden lift. Later they sat together by a fire. The crackling flames warmed the cold air. Between them, Elira looked at Marcus, her heart heavy with words she had kept inside for months. "I missed you," she said softly. "Every day felt like a wound. I thought if I could find you, the distance would end. But even now you still feel far away." Marcus's eyes softened. He leaned forward, his voice gentle. "Elira, I am here. I was always here, in your memory, in your courage. You carried me with you even when I was not near." She shook her head. "It is not the same. I want you here beside me. I want the silence to end." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then he said, "The silence will end. Because you came here. Because you did not give up. That is what makes you strong, Elira. You are more human than many humans I know." Her chest ached at his words. She wanted to believe him, but the months of distance had left scars on her heart. "Marcus," she whispered, "do you ever regret it? Taking the lashes for me?" He looked into the fire, the flames reflecting in his eyes. "No," he said, firmly. "Not for a single moment. Pain fades, scars fade, but hope remains. And that day when I shouted, 'Give them to me,' I saw something in the people's eyes. They knew then that cruelty could not win. That was worth every lash." Elira felt tears fall down her cheeks. She reached out, hesitating, then touched his scarred hand. "You gave me hope," she whispered, "and I will never let it die." That night, as she lay in a small room in the fortress, Elira thought about everything she had seen. The songs of the workers echoed in her mind. The strength in Marcus's eyes gave her courage. But still she felt the distance. Not of miles, not of silence, but of purpose. Marcus belonged to something greater now. Humanity was building a future, and he was part of it. She wondered if there would ever be a place for her in that future. The next morning, Marcus took her to the walls of the fortress. From there, they could see the mountains stretching far into the horizon, strong and unyielding. "This hall," Marcus said, "will stand for generations. It will remind the Empire that we cannot be broken. One day, Elira, this fire will spread across the land." Elira nodded, though her heart was heavy. She was proud of him. She was proud of humanity. But she still felt small, uncertain of her place in this rising fire. Yet deep inside, she also felt a spark. Perhaps distance was not something to fear. Perhaps distance was what made reunion powerful. That night, as Marcus walked her back to her room, he stopped and looked at her. "Elira," he said softly, "I cannot promise the path ahead will be easy. But I can promise this: wherever you go, whatever distance lies between us, you will never walk it alone. Because humanity does not abandon those it cares for." Her heart swelled at his words. The distance might still exist, but now it no longer felt endless, because hope was stronger. As Elira lay awake, she repeated the words that had carried her this far. She was doomed to 300 lashes, until the human shouted, "Give them to me." Those words had saved her life once. Now they saved her heart. Elira woke early, her eyes heavy from little sleep. The fortress around her buzzed with life. Hammers striking iron, voices rising in song, fires blazing in the forges. The humans moved with such purpose that it almost frightened her. She stepped outside her small room and watched them. Every person carried something: wood, stone, iron, food. Their hands were busy, their faces full of determination. For a moment, Elira felt out of place. She was not like them. She was not human. And even though Marcus had welcomed her, she felt the distance between them still. Later that day, Marcus found her standing near the courtyard of the fortress. He smiled, but his eyes carried tiredness. "Elira," he said gently, "you look troubled." She shook her head. "Not troubled, only lost. I don't know where I belong here." Marcus's smile faded. "You belong here as much as anyone. You came all this way. You carried hope when others could not. But I am not human," she whispered. "I cannot build stone walls or swing iron hammers. I am just me." Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. "Elira, it is not stone or iron that makes us strong. It is the will to keep going, even when it hurts. That is something you already carry." His words warmed her, but the sadness still lingered. That evening she sat near the fire in the great hall. People laughed and sang around her, their voices strong, but she felt small among them. She thought of her village, quiet and afraid. She thought of the empty house she had left behind, and she thought of Marcus, who was so close now yet still felt far. "Why does distance remain?" she whispered. "Even when I am beside him." The fire crackled, but no answer came. The next morning she tried to help. She carried buckets of water for the smiths, gathered wood for the builders, and cleaned tools for the guards. Her hands grew sore, but her heart felt lighter. Some of the humans smiled at her. One woman even said, "Thank you, friend. You work with heart." Those words filled Elira with warmth. Perhaps she did belong here after all. That night, Marcus came to find her. He looked tired, his back bent with the weight of responsibility, but when he saw her, his eyes softened. "You worked hard today," he said. Elira nodded. It felt good to do something useful. Marcus sat beside her, the firelight dancing across his scarred face. "That is the secret," he said. "When we work for something greater than ourselves, the distance inside us becomes smaller." She studied his face, remembering the day of the lashes. The scars on his back told a story of pain, but his eyes told a story of hope. "You never stop carrying others, do you?" she whispered. He smiled faintly. "That is what it means to be human." Days passed. Elira slowly became part of the life in the fortress. She worked, she learned, and she listened. The humans taught her songs of endurance, songs that turned sadness into strength. Yet even as she joined them, she sometimes felt the shadow of distance. She wanted to be close to Marcus, but his duties often pulled him away. He trained guards, spoke with leaders, and carried burdens she could not see. One evening, she watched him from afar, surrounded by others, his voice steady and strong. She felt proud, but also lonely. "I found him," she whispered to herself, "but I still do not know if I can keep him." One night, as she walked the walls, she saw the stars shining bright over the mountains. The air was cold, but the sight filled her with peace. She thought of Marcus's voice shouting in the courtyard, "Give them to me." Those words had once saved her life. Now they saved her again. Because she realized something. Distance was not an enemy. Distance was a road, and she had already walked far upon it. She could walk farther still. The next morning, Marcus joined her at the wall. They stood together, watching the sun rise over the mountains. "Elira," he said softly, "I know it has not been easy for you. I know I feel far away even though I stand here. But I need you to believe this. You are not alone. You never were." She turned to him, her eyes shining. "I want to believe. I want to feel close again." He smiled gently. "Then walk with us. Share the burden. Sing the songs. Build the walls. That is how we close the distance, not by waiting for it to end, but by walking through it together." Her heart swelled. For the first time since leaving her village, she felt not just hope, but belonging. That evening, she joined the others in song. Her voice trembled at first, but then it grew stronger. She sang of fire in the darkness, of scars that became strength, of lashes that could not break the human spirit. And as she sang, she saw Marcus watching her, pride shining in his eyes. The distance between them began to fade. Later, as she lay in her small room, Elira whispered to herself the words that had carried her all this way. She was doomed to 300 lashes until the human shouted, "Give them to me." Those words had once saved her body. Now they were saving her heart, because they reminded her that distance, like pain, could be carried, and that with hope even the heaviest burden could be endured. The fortress was growing stronger every day. Walls rose higher, fires burned brighter, and the people walked with steady steps. From the outside, it looked like a place of power. But inside Elira's heart, there was still a quiet emptiness. She tried to smile. She tried to work. But the feeling of distance returned again and again. Marcus was near, yet he was far. He belonged to the people, to their hopes and struggles. Elira sometimes felt like a shadow at the edge of his light. One evening, she sat alone by the river that flowed past the fortress. The water carried moonlight across its surface, silver and soft. She thought of her old village, of her friends who had turned their faces away when she left. She thought of the silence that had followed her steps. "Am I still alone?" she whispered. "Even when I stand among so many." Her heart ached. She wanted to be close to Marcus again, the way she had been on the day he took the lashes for her. But she did not know how. The next morning, a horn echoed across the fortress. People rushed to the gates, weapons in hand. Scouts had seen a patrol of the Empire's soldiers moving near the valley. It was not a full attack, but it was a test. Marcus stood at the front, giving orders. His voice was calm, his presence steady. Everyone listened to him. Elira watched from the wall, her hands gripping the stone. Fear coiled in her chest. She wanted to run and hide, but another feeling pushed against it. She wanted to help. When the soldiers came close, arrows flew from the Yao.